A few weeks ago we talked about transference. Just to recap on transference. Transference is when something's happening in you as a client or in your client that's coming from you. So the client will come to you and will pick up something. Maybe they're looking for a father figure. They've got dad issues. And suddenly you as a male counselor, this person will see the dad person in you, the person who's suddenly listening to you, an authority person, but actually giving you time, respect, whatever. So that's transference. It puts you in this place of being the father, being the dad. So same with, we get that same with, let's say someone comes to see you and needs a mother figure. Or you were this teacher in his or her mind that they adored at school. That's positive things. Negative things is they maybe have issues with their father. And suddenly they see you as the father. Maybe you're the same age as their father. Maybe, and you've got these, suddenly there's this clash that's happening. Sometimes, even as a person, you walk somewhere and a person will walk into a room and that person won't say a word to you, but you just have this resistance to this person. Has that happened to you before? Like a person comes in and you don't know him, he might be a very good person, but you're just like, I don't like him. Or a person comes in and they just, sometimes I'm used to speaking in front of people and the number of people in the audience doesn't really bother me, but it will happen before that. I'll have this whole thing and then I'll see this person walking there and it's like, I hope he's not coming in. And then when that person comes in, I feel intimidated by him. I don't know him, I've never seen him before, but I feel intimidated by him. And I spoke to my supervisor once about this and he said, I need to self-reflect a bit on what, because the problem is not him. The problem is me. There's something that I'm getting transference about this person. So when you've got these things, it's good to have some time to reflect. Why do I act this way? Why do I feel this way? What causes this in me to have this transference? Now today we're talking about the other one, the counter-transference. Now counter-transference is sort of the friend of transference. Counter-transference is positive. There's a positive to it, but there's also a negative to it. So we're just going to have a bit of time to sit around and talk about this one. What is counter-transference? It says here, counter-transference occurs when a therapist transfers emotions to a client. It is often a reaction to transference, a phenomenon in which a client redirects his or her feelings for the other person onto the therapist. Okay, so it's you as the therapist. Okay, let's say this is the situation. That's your client. That's you as the therapist. Okay. Okay, I'm going to give you the worst scenario ever, the bad scenario. Okay. All right. So this lady. Okay, therapist is a man. This lady is. Okay, she's married to this guy. Okay, so she's married to him. Okay, but he doesn't give her really attention. He works hard. He's always busy. She wants a companion, someone to give her time, someone to listen to her, someone to be her soundboard, and which she thought would be Mr. Smith. So she married Mr. Smith, so Mr. and Mrs. Smith's marriage is now in trouble. So Mrs. Smith comes to see the therapist, Dr. Freud. So she's seeing Dr. Freud. Okay? Dr. Freud also wears a nice hat, although sometimes that gets lost in, there's no more ink. He wears a very big, fat hat. But anyway, So she comes and sees Dr. Freud, and suddenly Dr. Freud listens to her, he talks to her, he gives her all his attention, she feels valued, she feels great, she likes Mr. Freud. So whatever she's supposed to transfer to him, Mr. Smith, she starts to transfers to him. So the adoration, the feeling of getting the respect, the feeling of whatever she needed, she's starting to give to him. Okay, so but he, Dr. Freud, is married to
Mrs. Freud.
Mrs. Freud.
Dame Edna.
Okay, that's Dame Edna. Okay, so Mrs. Freud, she's married to him. But Mrs. Freud just loves to have tea parties and always busy with all the women events, and she belongs to different clubs, the knitting club and the guinea pig association, and she belongs to all these things. So there's no space for Mr. Freud to feel adored and valued and someone that's taking care of her. So what happens, Mr. Freud or Dr. Freud picks up this transference from Mrs. Smith, like, you know, I adore this man, he values me, I respect him. So he picks it up, and what he does is he transfers back the feelings that he's supposed to have for her. The feelings of, I like this feeling of that you adore me. I like this feeling that you value me. I like this feeling that you respect me. I like this feeling that you like being in my presence. And that is counter-transference.
Well, it sure as heck isn't marriage.
That is marriage. That is not. Okay, so suddenly they've got this thing. Okay, and what happens is, with time, as he keeps on seeing her, she starts to get excited because it's time for my therapy session. He's like, oh, it's time for my client. I can't wait to see my client. I love my client. So she starts baking him cakes when he comes. And in the end, he starts inviting her over for more sessions, which he doesn't charge her for. And later on, they've got a relationship. And then Mr. Smith finds out, and Mrs. Freud finds out, and then the Counseling Association finds out, and it's just one big chaotic mess of people involved in all sorts of things. And that's counter-transference. It messes up stuff. That's the bad part of counter-transference. Okay, so what I want to say to you is, first of all, be aware of it. Okay? Be aware of your feelings, which is happening inside of you. When you work with someone, be aware of stuff happening in you. Also, the use of self. Beware how you feel. That's why we talk about professional supervision or clinical supervision. You go there and you talk to your supervisor and say, you know, I talk to this person and I get this feeling of, I really like this person. Some people that's got an issue. Like if you've really got an issue with, if you're a man and you really have like, you just love girls with blonde hair, long blonde hair. Don't counsel them. Stay away. If you a female counselor and you like these guys with big muscles and tall, dark hair guys, don't counsel them. Stay away from them. Don't go where you know there's going to be trouble. And that's just to protect you as a counselor, to protect your practice. Because one bad counseling session or one bad move can ruin your counseling career. Okay? An actor is only as good as his last movie. If you have one bad rumor about your practice, it can ruin you forever. Okay, so be aware of this counter-transference. Be aware of what you are transferring over to your client. Be aware of that. So, right. So it's a phenomenon in which a client redirects his or her feelings for the others onto the therapist. Okay. So the therapist will say to you, or client will direct, "I love you. I adore you." He'll pick it up and he'll send it back. Says, "I love you more. I adore you more." Same sort of story. Okay. That's the bad part of counter-transference. Okay. But I'd rather, first of all, explain to you the bad part of counter-transference than the good part, because this part can make the most damage, and we need to be aware of this. You need to be aware. I mean, since we talked about transference last time, were you a bit more aware of transference happening? Who did some soul searching about, why do I act around this person the way I do? Why does this happen? Why does that happen? And I don't feel like go and find every person like, whoa, do I transfer or don't I transfer? Or, what are you doing to me? No, that's not what I mean. It's like, just be normal in this and just be aware of it. And when you work with people, be aware of, I mean, it's like some people have that against authority figures. I know of people who can't stay in a job because they cannot respect whoever they're working for. And where does that come from? Where does that come from where you can't respect an authority figure?
Father, often.
Father, school, somewhere. It happens somewhere. And they take them with, you take it with you. So sometimes that's something you can talk to a client about. A client comes and see you, I just don't see, things don't happen. It's like a lady that's married, let's say 4 times already. And every single person she married to was an abuser. What happens that she draws those type of person? I've heard someone says to me, normally if you've married an alcoholic, your second or third husband will also be an alcoholic.
It's repeated. Something they're used to when you're growing up.
There's some sort of thing.
It's a transference often.
It's a transference, counter-transference.
You attract what you think you deserve.
Yeah,
Pretty
yeah. You attract. Why do you attract this? Okay, so that's something that you need to work with your clients. Client will come to you. Those are some of the stuff you'll work with your client, because they'll come to you and say, I've got this relationship issue. One of the most of the things we will see in the counseling room will be relationship issues. I'm not talking about relationship counseling or family therapy counseling. I'm talking about a person's coming to see you and say, I've got an issue with someone at work, I've got an issue with my husband, my child, my grandmother, my mother. All these things are relationship issues. So go and look into the situation also to see where's this transference. And I'm not saying every single issue is transference. I'm careful not to do that, but beware. And then also you as counselor, go and make some soul searching and make sure that you realize, where am I in this process? Especially if you've got a client coming in and you feel a bit different towards this person. I'm talking about positive or negative. Why? What's happening for you? And that's one thing also good, is when you do your counseling sessions, don't book your sessions. I'm going to counsel 5 hours today. Don't book them 9 to 10, 10 to 11, 11 to 12, 12 to 1, 1 to 2. And then I'm off for the day. Rather give yourself a 30 to 40 minute break between your clients. First of all, it helps you to do your notes. Secondly, it helps you to do some sort of debriefing, some reflection by yourself, some soul searching. And if you need to phone someone, like phone your supervisor or someone about something, that you've got the time to do that. Say, hey, I just had this client. It's like, this just happened in me. You know, or if there's peers that you trust that you can discuss stuff with, like if you work in a bigger organization, not only your own practice. So it's all those sort of things that you need to look at. Okay, so counter-transference occurs when the therapist transfers emotions onto a client. Negative or positive emotions. Okay, okay, so Freud realized that transference is universal and therefore could occur in the analyst as well. He did not write much about this except to say that counter-transference could interfere with successful treatment. The analyst experiencing counter-transference should rid himself of these feelings by having further analysis himself. That's self-reflection. Okay? It doesn't always have to go to your supervisor. Sometimes it's just you having some sort of self-reflection, some sort of, what's happening with me? What's happening? Why? And if you get to a point where you can't really answer this, take it to supervision. Okay, and again, supervisor, I'm not talking about your boss at work supervisor, I'm talking about clinical supervisor, which is a qualified counselor who doesn't work in your organization, he's apart from you, he's sort of your therapist, you pay this person. Okay? That's your supervisor I'm talking about. I'm not talking about a guy that works in your business. I'm talking about a person outside that you pay. Okay? So they're quite expensive because they must have done at least 750 hours of counseling before they could become a supervisor. So, okay. So, okay. It's universal, right? Anything anyone wants to add on counter-transference as far as we know? Yes.
It's way more common than you realise because it happens in everyday life. It's not until you study transference and counter-transference that you look back at your life and you think, oh my God, that's what that was.
Yes.
You know, sometimes it's a feeling that you have in your guts. It's not your intuition. It's just your gut saying, I don't like this person.
Yeah.
It's purely because they bring out something and you don't like it yourself. And then they behave in a certain way that they probably wouldn't normally, just purely because you're sending your vibes their way and they're picking them up. And they don't even know they're doing it, but they're counter-transferring back again.
Yeah.
So then you have two people that don't get along for no reason other than maybe when you're a child you had a teacher you didn't like. You know what I mean? It's so common, and I think that's what we need to say to everybody.
Yeah.
Don't think this is something that's going to happen once in your life. As a counsellor, it's going to happen every week.
Yeah. It happens. It happens in normal conversations, not only in the counselling room, it happens outside. So even in your relationships, since we got aware of this, and my wife and I sometimes will talk about stuff, and she'll be upset with me about something, and then she would say, I'm wondering what you are transferring now. I'm wondering where that comes from. Instead of saying, hey, what are you doing? I'd say, I'm wondering where that comes from now. Or I'd say, I haven't seen that before. It's like, is that coming from your grandmother? Sometimes one day she said to me, that which you did was now your dad. That was your dad that was coming out now. So, be aware, and we can pick these things up if you're aware of them. Okay, I had a good dad, but there was parts of him which I don't want to transfer onto my kids. And then sometimes that comes out. So my wife is with me in this journey, and she says to me, the way you acted now towards the son was, I think your dad would have done that. So. Okay, examples of counter-transference. Not all counter-transference is problematic. For example, a therapist may meet with a client who is in extreme difficulty making conversation. The therapist might find him or herself unwittingly leading the conversation and providing additional prompts to the client to encourage him or her to talk. A therapist who realizes this can then point to the counter-transference to help the client better understand the effect of his or her difficulty in making this conversation. A therapist who has experienced the same issues as a client may also be able to emphasize with him or her more deeply, whether the therapist decides to share those personal stories or not. So if you were abused as a child, and your client comes to you and talks about the abuse they're going through, that your counter-transference can be more empathy instead of the negative side, like I'm falling in love with you, I'm going to take you out to dinner thing. I can transfer empathy onto you because I know what you're going through. I know what you are experiencing. You can share that if you want to, but again, as we say, we don't really like to self-disclose too much. If it's good for the situation, yes. There's actually just one prac that says self-disclose. All the others are just, don't tell us about your own life. Because the client doesn't come to hear about your life, they come to talk about their lives.
Their issues.
Okay, so, but it can be a positive. And you as a counsellor can use that to the best of advantage to the client. Because that's what we're here. We're here for the clients. We're not here for ourselves.
No, we do our housekeeping later.
Okay, so anything on that? On positive? Tell me where, is there examples in your life where you talked to someone and you felt the same way about something?
So will you bounce off the,
We more add to them, not really bounce off ideas.
no, but you
Yeah.
connect with you, sort of
You
take
connect.
each other on sort of.
You connect,
Yeah.
yes, that special connection where some people you just feel you've got that special connection. Don't know what it is, I can just relate to you. Okay. So however, a problematic example of counter-transference might occur when a client triggers a therapist's issues with his or her own child. The client, for example, might be defiant with the therapist and may transfer feelings of defiance he or she feels toward a parent onto the therapist. If the therapist reacts to the client as one would react to one's own child, such as by becoming increasingly controlling, without recognizing the counter-transference, this could negatively impact the therapeutic relationship. So, if you've got a child who's defiant of you, who's not doing what you're saying, who's not answering your questions, who's ignoring you, and you've got this client who's doing the same, you're picking this up, because the client might transfer this onto you because they've got an issue of their own parent or teacher or authority figure, and I'm not listening to you, and I'm not going to. That's why I said it's always try not to use the word homework. Don't tell your client go home and do some homework, because that might just get them to switch off. Okay, so rather go home and try this exercise or try this activity or try this. Just think of how you speak. But then they come home to you, they come back to the session and says, no, I didn't do that. And it's like, oh, you're saying it in the same attitude as my child. Okay, and then you're like, what? And it might end up in becoming an argument. It's not intended to be, but because you don't do what I say. My child don't do what I say. You're acting just like a child. And they say, like, you act just like a parent. And in the end, that therapeutic relationship is messed up. Okay, so it's important to make sure that to see where you are. Okay, it can also cause conflict. Okay, it's just make sure to find out where you are in your journey. Okay, that's why when you start feeling feelings like this client irritates the wax out of me, go and find out why. I had a client who irritated me. You know, one of those clients which you wish they won't come back? The only thing is she did come back. She was very controlling. She was controlling all the people around her. She was controlling. She stopped coming back when I said you're controlling. She didn't like that, so then she went away. So
You put the boundaries up, didn't you?
yeah, and then she went away. Because then I told her something that she didn't want to hear. I said to her, I basically said to her, like, don't you think people avoid you because you are controlling, and then she's not coming?
Because you told the truth.
Yeah. Sorry?
Sounds like my sister.
Yeah, unfortunately it wasn't my sister, but yeah,
We
we all have a sister like that. But sometimes you have to say the truth. Okay, my supervisor said that's cool. You did the right thing.
Can you associate that with the firstborn?
Sorry?
Can you associate that with the firstborn? Controlling or matriarch or?
Quite often.
The firstborn is normally, no, not really. The firstborn is normally the relaxed one. The secondborn is the competitive one.
What about the youngest? Where's the youngest?
Oh, the
fitting?
youngest is just a pain. Because the youngest is the spoiled one.
How do you get away with it?
That's what's it, Michael? The guy who wrote the book Raising Boys wrote. He wrote the stages, and I've experienced it with the secondborn. But sometimes the firstborn can be controlling. It depends on how much authority the firstborn got as a child. Because sometimes you get that parents will almost abdicate their
I'm in the middle.
their
so
authority onto this child.
I always used to get in trouble.
So the case with my kids was when their father died. The eldest was 5 and the youngest was 2.
Yep.
And the mother made the 5-year-old the parent. So the 5-year-old became the dad. She talked to him about the house finances. She talked to him about everything. So when she passed away and we got both kids, he would set the table for the youngest. He will make sure that his breakfast is. He'll go and see that his school clothes are ready for the next day and things like that. He'll clean up after the youngest because he was the parent.
That's a big responsibility
So
for a
we,
5-year-old.
I had big issues with him because he didn't know what to do with a dad suddenly, because you're taking my place. I remember the first time he was crying was when my wife and I was busy talking about the house budget, and we didn't involve him. And he cried because he wants to know. And I said, "You're a child. You're not. I want you to be a child." So that's. Sometimes those things happen. We place responsibilities on. My wife's the eldest. That's why I would say she was the eldest, and she had the most. She had the hardest time. They're a great family, but she was the one that was to look after the others. If they messed up, she got in trouble. The second born is always, still today, second born is 2 years younger than my wife. She's always in competition with my wife. Even though my wife doesn't even feel competition, there's always this thing like, I need to be better, my house needs to be bigger, I need to have more stuff, things like that. So, and according to, I can't remember the guy's name, he's one of my favourite authors, and he just left me, but he wrote the book Raising Boys.
Charles Dobson?
No. I think it's actually an Australian guy. I'll go Raising Boys, Raising Boys. Dobson wrote one too. I know there's a Raising Boys by Dobson, but this guy, I'll get his name. I'll tell you his name later. But he wrote the stages of competitiveness. But number 2 can compete extremely. Like we've got a number 2 that competes like crazy.
My step-niece, Ebony, because she's got the 6 kids, the 2 boys and the 3 girls, her second eldest son tends, even though there's about a year or 2, because the eldest one's 12, and then he's down in 9, and I think he's 10 going on 11, something like that, and he's very competitive.
We have, my 2 boys are, the youngest is like, he doesn't really, he's like happy-go-lucky, whatever happens, happens. When their dad died and then 5 years later their mom died, And he said it really didn't bother him where we're going to go, what we're going to do, because he knew that his brother was in control. His brother was, so they lived across from a forest with palm trees and stuff. It's in South Africa, and he said, well, he thought they're just going to live there in the bush. That's fine, it's okay. And when we adopted them, or when first went into foster care with us, we put them in a private school, and then the youngest school would come out 2 hours earlier than the eldest, because the eldest was now in this more senior sectional, and the youngest was like year 1 when we got them. And then I'll go and pick him up and take him to my office, and then the whole time he'll ask me, when's my brother coming? When's my brother coming? When are you going to fetch him? And then I realized that his brother is his security. He needs to be close to his brother, so we put him into after school care. And he was all happy because, so when I fetched them together because his security was his brother.
Yeah.
So that's where he got his security. The brother had no security. And these days, the kid that's got the most issues is the brother.
Is that the 18?
He's now 19.
Oh, 19.
He's got the most issues. The youngest one is just happy. So there's a lot of stuff happening there, and I'm sure that as they move into relationships, especially the eldest, as they move into relationships, we're going to see a lot of this stuff, this counter-transference things going to happen because of the way they grew up. So we're trying to identify stuff, and I want you to as you go through life, remember these two things, the counter-transference and the transference. Especially when you come to relationships with your partner or also with your children. What are you transferring? And what are they transferring? Where does this come from? Because a lot of stuff that we transfer comes from somewhere. I was the only child, which is awesome. Most people think it's awesome to be the only child. No, it's not. My parents were married 13 years before I was born. They were just married, and within 2 years after they married, first child was born. He only lived 2 weeks, then he died.
Really?
So for 13 years they didn't have any children, and I was born. So what happened was, when I was there, they sort of put everything into me. My mom would, if I want to do something, she would say, oh, let me do that for you, let me do that for you, let me do that for you. So, which is great and thankful that mom helped me and everything, but the end is I felt like, oh, I can't do anything for myself. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I can't do anything because they always keep on taking it away from me, and they were doing it, and they were building it, and they were, I mean, I had the best school assignments because they did it for me. It's like, so now, my 18-year-old, 19-year-old, now if I want to do something, he's like, Dad, I'll do it for you.
So how did that make you feel?
And then I freak out. It's like, can you leave me alone? I want to do this. I can do you think I can't do this? And the other day I realized where this comes from. I know he's good with doing stuff with his hand, and I'm terrible. I can't build an IKEA cupboard. I can't do it. But he does it in like 30 minutes. He's like an IKEA king.
I can't put things together.
I break stuff while I do it, and I have to go and get extra parts at IKEA every time because I just keep on breaking the things. But my son can do it.
Yeah.
But
Some people can, some people can't.
I'm transferring this,
Yeah.
what I've experienced as a child, now suddenly onto him, and I'm like really, really upset. Yesterday I got home and I said, this weekend I want to polish the car. And then he started telling me how to